Well, welcome to a new Team CGC 9.8 video. And today I wanted to talk about Spawn number 1 and another book that I think is probably a better investment option to Spawn number 1. And, we'll get into kind of some of the reasons why Spawn number 1 probably isn't the best investment book. But before that, I just want to invite you to join the team, subscribe to Team CGC 9.8 here, and make sure you hit that bell to get all the latest notifications. And yeah, just at this early time, we just reached over 100 subscribers, so still early in the channel though, so want to get as many subs as we can here, so that would be so much appreciated. Now getting into some of the books though. So as I said, Spawn number 1, I think there is kind of some better investment options for Spawn number 1. And now really quickly, the main option I would say for an alternative to Spawn number 1 is Spawn number 1 in the newsstand version. So we have this UPC code here on the front. In general, about 20% of the prints are newsstand. So about 20% of all Spawn number 1s back in the day were newsstand versions. These were generally on kind of convenience store newsstands, literally. And in other shops where there's a lot of foot traffic type things like that. So in general they're in better shape as well too. So that's why the newsstand version of Spawn number 1 is sort of the one you want to get. Now so we'll get into some reasons here why Spawn number 1 in the direct edition, there's just literally just so many of them. So looking on the CGC Census, there's 4,819 Spawn number 1s. Now some of those would be in the direct edition, some of those would be in the UPC newsstand edition, the one that I just showed you. But there's so many of them, and certainly Spawn number 1 in the newsstand edition is a really good buy. It's a book that I want in the CGC 9.8, I don't have that, so that's one I'm looking out for. But what I don't like about that book is there's no CGC Census data for it. So basically these Spawn number 1 newsstands are lumped in with the Spawn number 1 direct editions on the CGC Census. So you can't really know specifically how many newsstand editions of Spawn number 1 in the 9.8 that there are. Obviously in the CGC 9.8 Spawn number 1 there's 4,819 of them, some of them being newsstand editions too, but since we can't get the exact number, that is a bit of a negative as far as Spawn number 1 newsstand being a investment grade book. I still think it is. Spawn number 1 newsstand's putting you at about at least $400 US in the CGC 9.8. So certainly it's still an investment grade book, still one I would recommend. But I also think there's another book here to recommend as well, and I'm sure you've kind of known from the title. And we'll look on the CGC Census to show you why I recommend it. But it's Batman 423. And Batman 423 is such a classic Todd Mcfarlane book. And he only did the cover on this one actually, so unlike Incredible Hulk 340, he also did the inside pencils and everything, which look amazing. I mean, the inside of Incredible Hulk 340 is awesome, the Todd Mcfarlane art. Just as a cover on this one. So first off, we'll get into kind of looking on the CGC Census and comparing the two, and kind of getting into the reasons why I think this is a really good investment grade book. But just looking at the cover here, so many classic Todd Mcfarlane and Spawn elements, basically about 4 years before Spawn 1 came out. So this is why I think this is sort of the real Spawn number 1. And obviously got some of the Spawn elements we'll talk about, but it's also looking really good on the CGC Census too. So let's get into some of those elements though. You got Batman here. Obviously Batman and Spawn, both kind of darker superheroes. So Batman here, you see he's kind of got the full blacked out face with just the eyes showing, and that's really Spawn. That's total Spawn. Just being in the shadows and just having the eyes and all the expression that happens from Spawn's eyes. It happens with Batman here too. Todd Mcfarlane doing the drawing. It's got the classic Todd Mcfarlane circle, which is really cool. You notice that from Amazing Spider-Man 300, Amazing Spider-Man 301. He really likes to have some circular elements a lot of times in the backgrounds. So that's so classic Todd McFarlane too. And probably, you know, the biggest reason why I think this could be is a really good alternative to Spawn number 1 and is sort of the real Spawn number 1 is just the cape as well. So Batman's cape really looks like it kind of has a mind of its own in on this cover, and just even this portion here just really looks like a Spawn cape essentially. And what's really cool about this too is that before, you know, before Spawn came out, Spawn number 1, it was sort of Todd McFarlane's character that he created when he was a teenager learning how to draw type of thing. So certainly at this time he would have known about Spawn. So I think some of the elements of Spawn got into this Batman cover when, you know, a young Todd McFarlane at this time certainly knew about Spawn himself, not the world didn't. But definitely so many elements of Spawn in this cover, and I think it's a really cool cover, very collectible, and you know, looking on the CGC Census, it even looks better, and that's why in general I'm kind of recommending this as the real Spawn number 1, because Spawn number 1 itself, there's just so many of them. In 1992 when it came out, you know, that was pretty much the peak of comic book printing. So almost the peak of the comic book popularity bubble, I would say. So there's so many Spawn number 1s printed. It was so popular back in the early to mid-90s. And that's why there's 4,819 Spawn number 1s in the CGC 9.8. So looking at Batman 423, there are only 81 CGC 9.8s in the world, in the blue label here. So only 81 of these. There's quite a few, not quite a few, but I think there's about 30-something signature series books as well, with Todd McFarlane mostly signing the signature series books. But in the blue label, you know, how it would have came on the first day in the comic shop back in 1988, there's only 81 of these in the CGC 9.8, compared to Spawn number 1, 4,819 of them. And again, because on the CGC Census, it doesn't show a difference between newsstand and direct, you can never really know how many Spawn number 1 newsstands there are. So again, that's kind of a negative when you're thinking about it from an investment point, because you always really like, when you're buying books for an investment, to be like, you know, oh, this is a 1 of 200 item, or a 1 in 100 item, or a 1 in 81 item in this case. So, you know, for me, you could, you know, I totally recommend, if you really want a Spawn number 1, if you're a huge Spawn fan, then go for the newsstand version, the one I showed earlier here. I'm still looking for one at an affordable price for in the CGC 9.8. They, yeah, Spawn newsstand in the CGC 9.8. They sell quite often for $400 US. Yeah, right now I'm really only seeing people with buy it now prices online trying to get $500-600 American, maybe even more than that for their Spawn number 1 newsstand. So I'm still on the lookout for kind of a decent price, around $400 for a Spawn number 1 in the CGC 9.8. But if you do want a Spawn number 1, as I've recommended in prior videos, buy the newsstand version of Spawn number 1, even if it's in the raw like this one here. You know, again, there's just so many direct versions of Spawn number 1. It's really not an investable book. Personally, if you're thinking about comic investing from an investment perspective, you want to get a Spawn number 1 newsstand or a Batman 423. And I mean, personally, Batman 423 I just think is so cool. Again, so many Spawn elements 4 years before Spawn came out. And instead of thousands and thousands and thousands on the CGC Census, there's only 81 in the 9.8s. So yeah, you know, Batman 423 in the 9.8 white pages, if you're interested in buying, you know, I would personally recommend to try to find those 1-week auctions on it. And, you know, Batman 423 being a pretty rare book, only 81 in the world, I think, you know, last year, or in this last year, I'd say I probably only saw 3 or 4 for a 1-week auction in the Batman 423. 3 or 4 of them going for a 1-week auction, so they're not gonna. It's not gonna be something that's gonna pop up every you know, 1 or 2 every month kind of thing, because there is only 81 in the world. And you know, another thing, Batman 423 in the CGC 9.8, be careful. A lot of people online trying to get $600-700 for it, which, you know, I mean, it's such a great book. I think that could actually be a fair price maybe 5-10 years down the line. But right now, you know, you just want to be patient on Batman 423 because there's not a lot of them. So it's not going to be popping up all the time. So be patient on it. Wait for those 1-week auctions, and yeah, you should be able to get one in between $400 and $500 US for Batman 423. No signature series, just the normal blue label. 400 or 500, and you know, hopefully Bidding War does it, because I've seen them kind of get over 500 as well, US, just for a really nice, you know, new case Batman 423 in the new case. I've seen go for over 500 US in an auction as well. So it's a really popular book. Classic Todd McFarlane cover, can't go wrong cover wise. Again, all those Spawn elements before Spawn came out. So I think, you know, as far as investments go from the 1980s, and that's why I have 2 of them, I think Batman 423 is a really good book to have. You know, especially if you're a Spawn fan. It's like, you know, I think almost a must book to have. And if you can't afford the 9.8s, you know, rough copies are great too. I'd stick with the first print as well. First print, you notice here, you're going to have Batman's face here, or a UPC code in the first print. The second and third prints, they have a couple words there. I forget exactly what it says, but there's words here. It's not a UPC or Batman's face. So yeah, definitely keep that in mind. You kind of just want to go with the first print with these. Yeah, I know on the CGC Census, sometimes the second and third prints have less books, but they just don't sell as good. Like, the first prints always sell, and there's definitely always some, you know, Batman 423 fanatics like myself out there looking for them. So yeah, grab the first print. It's a little more money for sure. In the CGC 9.8, I'd recommend, if you're going CGC route, get a 9.8. If you can't afford a 9.8, then I would just get really nice raw copies. Personally, wouldn't buy like a 9.4 or 9.6. I would just go raw copies if you can't do the 9.8. Okay, so, you know, looking at that Spawn on the CGC Census with, you know, 4,819 of them, you know, when I first got into this, that kind of got me thinking about some alternatives to Spawn. And I mean, Batman 423 is definitely the best alternative to Spawn. All those classic Spawn elements. And it looks great on the Census, as we spoke about. So great. Thanks so much for watching the video, guys. That'll be it for today. I really wanted to I know I did a video on Spawn and talked about Batman 423 kind of near the end of that video, but I do think it's a great book to invest in, and being only 81 of them in the world, you know, getting a 1 of 81 collection item that is as cool as, you know, getting this classic Todd McFarlane Batman cover, because, you know, Incredible Hulk 340 and a lot of these other Todd McFarlane keys from Amazing Spider-Man and Incredible Hulk 340, they have 600, 700, 800, 900 copies to them, and I know they're probably a little more popular than Batman 423, but for a classic Todd McFarlane cover, one of his first, with all his classic elements, with the circle and everything, plus the Spawn elements, and there's only 81 in the world. Like, I think over time, this issue is going to do really good, and, you know, Batman comics in the 80s weren't printed as much as other comics as well, so I don't think, you know, all of a sudden that 81 is going to get to like 300 or 400 overnight. So that, yeah, again, can't stress that enough, to have 81 9.8s. And, you know, just thinking about even like a brand new key, that Teen Titans 12 with the first Batman Who Laughs, there's already 400 and something CGC 9.8s graded in that book. So, you know, a brand new book, there's over 400 of them already, whereas this book being over 30 years old and there's only 81. You know, I don't think that number is going to go up very much over time. And again, anything of a 1 under 100 item, I feel is, you know, really going to have that appeal to collectors as time goes on even more. So that's why I'd really, really recommend Batman 423 right now in this environment too. So yeah, because there's no real movies or anything. I know the Joker movie's coming out, but, you know, Batman books, you could feel pretty safe right now that you're getting, you know, a kind of market price for them. So Alright guys, thanks so much for watching the video today. If you haven't already, please join the team and subscribe to Team CGC 9.8 here. Click that bell because yeah, we're on a bit of a roll with videos here, trying to do, you know, maybe 5 or 6 videos a week here. So, and we just got over 100 subscribers, and I definitely heartfelt thanks in the last video, but thank you again for getting us over 100 subs here. So thanks so much for watching the video today, guys, and I will see you on the next one.